Welcome everyone to Fighting Fraud with AARP Connecticut, a bi-monthly program in which we discuss a different fraud or scam and how you can protect yourself and your loved ones from becoming victims, all in 30 minutes. We are joined by Nancy Feliciano of the Internal Revenue Service, talking about how to protect yourself from tax fraud and identity theft and what to do if you or someone you know may be a victim. Nancy, thank you for joining us.
Happy to be here, Kelly.
We are so happy to have you joining us regarding this imperative topic, Nancy. So let's get started. Scams are rampant these days, with criminals stealing a reported $10 billion, that's billion with a B, from Americans last year, according to the Federal Trade Commission. And this is just what is being reported. So we know that that number is likely much higher. There are year-round scams, but some of scammers' favorites occur every year during tax season, like clockwork. So let's discuss some of the specific ways that scammers take advantage of taxpayers, because there's more than one. We'll start with a scam that I'm sure you're very familiar with, Nancy, the IRS imposter scam. Can you tell us a bit about this scam?
Yes, this scam can actually affect victims in a couple of different ways. Some criminals rip off unwary taxpayers by impersonating agents of the IRS. They will connect with taxpayers through phone calls, mail, emails, even text messages, and insist that you have an unpaid tax bill and face arrest unless you pay immediately. So in a recent twist, taxpayers will be contacted regarding an unclaimed refund and offer a phone number that is not the IRS, and then ask to divulge personal information like their social security number.
Interesting. So scammers can convince you that the IRS is calling for a bad reason, like owing taxes, or even a good reason, like a fake unclaimed refund. And this is a tactic that we see in other scams as well. Career scammers have claimed that when they make contact with a victim, their goal is to get them what they call under the ether, or in a heightened emotional state. The higher or lower the emotion, the more vulnerable we are to making crucial mistakes. So Nancy, on that note, what do we do if we receive a suspicious IRS-related communication?
Okay, if you receive a suspicious IRS-related communication, either can be a letter or email or text claiming to be from the IRS that contains a request for personal information, taxes, or banking information, do not reply to it. Do not open any attachments. They can contain malicious codes that can infect your computer and your mobile device. Also, don't click on any links. You can visit a protection page for more information on that, and forward the emails to the IRS to phishing@irs.gov. The IRS is keeping a good eye on these scam emails, and delete the original email. If you receive a phone call from someone claiming to be from the IRS, but you suspect that they are not from the IRS, report the incident to the appropriate law enforcement agencies. If it's IRS tax related, you can report it to the Treasury Inspector General for Tax Administration, or in addition, you can file a complaint with the Federal Trade Commission as well. Also, the Federal Communications Commission. Consumers should select the phone form and then check unwanted calls and phone issues and provide details of the call in the description of their complaint. Also, you can contact your local Attorney General's office too.
All right, so I heard a few things there. The number one being, don't click on anything, don't respond, don't try to play with the scammer, as I think a lot of people do. Just report it to the necessary authority and make sure you delete that email. But Nancy, it does feel like it's difficult to trust any alleged IRS communication, particularly because scammers can really make these seem legitimate. But surely the IRS may have to reach out to taxpayers sometimes. So as a taxpayer, when can I know that a communication from the IRS is legitimate?
First, the IRS does not initiate contact with taxpayers by email, text messages, or social media. We initiate most of our contacts through regular mail delivered by the United States Postal Service. However, there are situations where an IRS agent or revenue officer can make an in-person visit to your home or address. For example, if it's a revenue officer and a revenue agent, they can make that call. But even in those situations, the IRS IRS already have sent you a lot of notices in the mail before they even contact you in person. So the IRS will never ask you to make a payment using a prepaid debit cards or gift cards or any wire transfers. So that's very important to keep in mind. Also, the IRS won't threaten to bring in the local police, immigration officers, or any other law enforcement to have you arrested for not paying. The IRS cannot revoke your driver's license, your business license, or immigration status, which are common tactics used by scam artists to trick victims. And finally, the service will never call or email you asking for ID, passwords, social security numbers, or any other sensitive information. You can always contact the IRS at 1-800-829-1040 to verify if the communication is real.
That's an important thing, is anytime that you think you're getting communication from a government agency, pause, don't necessarily take the phone number or the email that they list as legitimate. Do your own research to make sure that the communication is real. But that said, mistakes can still be made. So if a mistake is made, what can someone do if they suspect that they or a loved one has been a victim of identity theft and that their social security number is compromised?
If you suspect that you're a victim of identity theft, the IRS recommends respond immediately to any IRS notice and call the number provided on the notice. If you electronically file your return and it's rejected because of a duplicate filing under your social security number, or if the IRS instructs you to do so, complete form 14039, which is the identity theft affidavit, and attach it to the back of your completed paper tax return and mail it to the IRS based on the location of your state. You have the option to submit the form online and mail in your paper tax return separately. The form is available on the IRS Identity Theft Central page on irs.gov.
That's just one of the scams that go on this time of year. Another popular scam involves tax preparer fraud, or what we call ghost tax preparers. Ghost preparers set up shop around tax time in pop-up offices and pitch their services at community gathering places such as churches or on social media. They promise big refunds, and for a fee, they will fill out a return. They might invent income to falsely claim tax credits or fabricate deductions such as business, education, or medical expenses. And when the refund rolls in, it goes right into their bank accounts, not yours. And many of the scammers then disappear with your fee. And because your name is on the return, it's your responsibility to fix the quote unquote mistakes. That means that along with paying the taxes you actually owe, you're liable for any penalties and interest that are accrued. So big risks there. Nancy, what are some red flags that might tell us that a tax preparer is not legitimate?
A ghost preparer is someone who does not sign the return that they prepare. So not signing a return is a big red flag that the pay preparer may be looking to make a quick profit by promising a big refund or charging fees based on the size of the refund. So it is important to choose a tax return preparer wisely. Taxpayers are responsible for all the information on their income tax return, regardless of who prepares a tax return. Here are some tips to remember when selecting a tax preparer. You can use the IRS directory of federal tax return preparers with credentials and check the preparer's qualifications and history. This tool helps taxpayers find a tax return preparer with specific qualifications. You can ask the local Better Business Bureau about the preparer, check for disciplinary actions and the license status for the credentialed preparer. There are some additional organizations that you can check for the specific type of preparers. For enrolled agents, you can check the enrolled agent status page on irs.gov. For certified public accountants, you can check the State Board of Accountancy. For attorneys, you can check the State Bar Association. Also, ask about the service fees. People should avoid preparers who require you to pay in cash and base fees on a percentage of their refund, and who say that they can get you a bigger refund from their competitors. They can make up income to qualify for bigger credits, and they can claim fake deductions to boost the size of the refund, and also direct refunds into their bank accounts refunds instead of your account. So review details about any refunds and confirm the routing and bank account numbers on the completed tax return and make sure that is your correct banking information number, and ensure the preparer is available at all times, not just during the filing season or the April 15th due date. And good preparers will ask to see your records and receipts, and they will ask questions to figure out things like total income, tax deductions, and credits. Also, all paid tax preparers must have a paid tax identification number, and by law, they are supposed to sign the return and include their PTIN on the return they file. So ensure the preparer signs the return, and never sign a blank tax return. So do not use a tax preparer who asks you to sign a blank tax form. The Choosing a Tax Professional page on irs.gov has information about tax preparer credentials and how to find an honest tax preparer.
Excellent, thank you. And I think it also, speaks to this can be a struggle of a season for a lot of people. There's a lot of things that we don't always understand about the tax season. So if you feel like your tax preparer is kind of pushing you to do a certain thing that you might not be comfortable with, go with your gut, because that's what we were talking about earlier with being under the ether and feeling vulnerable. We want to pause in those moments and really try to think clearly. And of course, just like with identity theft, accidents do happen. So if someone has been a victim of tax preparer fraud, what can they do?
Most paid tax preparers are professionals, so let's always keep that in mind. However, the IRS is committed to investigating those who are not act properly. So you can report a tax return preparer for misconduct, such as filing an individual Form 1040 series return without your knowledge or consent, and altering your tax return documents after you already provided them with your information, or using incorrect filing statuses to generate a larger refund. Also, creating false exemptions or dependents to generate a larger refund, or omitting income is a misconduct. So misdirecting your refund to their own bank account. So if you think that you have been a victim of tax preparer fraud, being financially impacted by a tax return preparer misconduct, or improper tax preparation services or practices, you can make a complaint to the IRS using Form 14157, which is a complaint for tax return preparers. If you suspect that a tax preparer filed or changed your tax return without your consent, you can complete Form 14157-A, which is the tax return preparer fraud or misconduct affidavit.
So Nancy, my question is around identity protection pins. What are they and how do I get one?
An identity protection pin, which what we call an IP pin, is a 6-digit number that prevents someone else from filing a tax return using your social security number or individual taxpayer identification number. The IP pin is known only to you and the IRS, so it helps us verify your identity when you file your electronic or paper tax return. So even though you may not have a filing requirement, an IP pin still protects your account. So if you don't already have an IP pin, you may get an IP pin as a proactive step to protect yourself from tax identity theft. If you want to request an IP pin, please know that you must pass an identity verification process. Spouses and dependents are also eligible for an IP pin. Once you have opted in and obtained an IP pin online, you will need to retrieve your IP pin online each calendar year, as a notice will not be mailed. The fastest way to get an IP pin is to go online on the Get an IP Pin tool on irs.gov. If you don't already have an account on irs.gov, you must register to validate your identity. If you don't do it online, you can also apply by paper, filing Form 15227, which is the application for identity protection personal identification number.
So a couple questions for Nancy. What should I do for my missing information, Form 1099 INT, that the bank sent and I never received? The post office said it was delivered.
Okay, you can also always go back to the bank and say, can you send me a duplicate copy? Most of those are issued online as well. So you might be able to get online. So you can always contact your your provider, like the bank or whoever is providing that 1099 INT and request that they issue you another copy.
In addition to that, is there a risk then if the form is missing that might be a red flag that somebody's trying to, steal their identity, or there might be some fraud involved there?
Well, not necessarily that there might be fraud, but I mean, it's a missing document, so you still want to make sure that you track it down. So, but just make sure that that all your income gets reported on your tax return. I mean, the IRS does have all that income documentation that will match against your tax return. So, if there's any additional information that has been reported, the IRS will let you know.
Okay. And what are the ways that one would be alerted if their identity had been compromised?
If the IRS notices that a duplicate return has already been filed, they will definitely send you a letter. They will also ask you to verify your identity by online or calling in a special number or visiting a local tax assistance center.
Okay, thank you. Continuing education is the most important thing that we can do to make sure that we don't fall prey to these career criminals. Because as soon as you think that you understand a scam and it won't impact you, the scammers up their game and find a way to make them more threatening, really. Nancy, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, other scams to look out for.
Yeah, every year the IRS puts out what we call the Dirty Dozen list, and it lists the most prevalent scams going on during that time. So just remember that, the scams are not just during the filing season, they are throughout the whole year. So especially, you got to be careful with fake charities too, that they are out there trying to steal money from good taxpayers that are, they're trying to donate money to a disaster, but then we have these fake charities. So always make sure that you keep an eye on those. For the latest scams and the Dirty Dozen list, you can go on irs.gov and you can search Dirty Dozen and you can just see the list of the top 12 scams that are going on.
Or you can visit aarp.org/fraudwatch network for great resources for protection. And for those who are unaware, the AARP Foundation has tax aid sites all around the country, and there are opportunities for seniors and people of low income to get their taxes prepared free of charge by highly skilled, trained volunteers. So if that is something that you are interested in, we recommend it. I've had my taxes prepared through the tax aid program, and I cannot recommend them enough. If you suspect a scam, call your local police or the Fraud Watch helpline at 877-908-3360. Again, that's 877-908-3360. You can also sign up for AARP's biweekly watchdog alerts at aarp.org/fraud. And remember, it is information, awareness, and education that is our best defense to avoid scams. At AARP, our goal is to help you live your best lives as you age, and that includes your health and well-being. Along with informative programs like this, we host regular fun and educational webinars with groups that are part of our local communities. You can find them all and so much more, including our weekly webinar Wednesdays at aarp.org/CT events. And please follow us on Facebook for the latest information. I want to thank Nancy Feliciano for joining us today, and to all of you as well.